Hey guys, it is officially 2021. Happy New Year, and I hope 2021 brings us all of the things we missed in 2020. With that being said, we have some books to talk about. Not only am I going to give you a book review for all of the videos I read in December, which was only 2, but I'll tell you why that is in a little bit. I am also going to give you a roundup of all of my favorite books that I read this year, and I want you to leave me a comment below and let me know what your favorite book or books you read this year were. We've got a lot to cover, so let's just get right into it. The very first book that I read this month was The Tommyknockers by Stephen King. This was published in 1987. It is 864 pages, and I will read you the description. On a beautiful June day, while walking deep in the woods on her property in Haven, Maine, Bobby Anderson quite literally stumbles over her own destiny and that of the entire town. For the dull gray metal protrusion she discovers in the ground is part of a mysterious and massive metal object. One that may have been buried there for millennia. Bobby can't help but become obsessed and try to dig it out, the consequences of which will affect and transmute every citizen of Haven, young and old. It means unleashing extraordinary powers beyond those of mere mortals, and certain death for any and all outsiders. An alien hell has now invaded this small New England town, an aggressive and violent malignancy devoid of any mercy or sanity. It's a bit of a shame because I think this is one of his more popular books, but I didn't love this one. I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And I think the reason for that is that there were just way too many characters, and I found the story really difficult to follow, at least in my opinion. It was broken up, I believe, into 3 parts. And Stephen King does that a lot, where he'll break his books up into larger chunks, and then within those chunks there are smaller chapters, which I tend to enjoy. But in this case, I really liked the very first part of the book, and I really liked the very last part of the book. But the middle section was like the whole beef of the story, and I didn't enjoy it a lot. So definitely not a book I would recommend to a lot of people. If you're really into sci-fi stuff, maybe this is for you, but personally I didn't love it. I don't think that it's one of his best books. But I do know quite a few people that like this book a lot, so that could just very well be me. And the main reason that I didn't read many books this month is because I finally got around to reading It by Stephen King. And honestly, I think that reading Tommyknockers before reading this set me up to really enjoy this, and I will explain why in a minute. This book was published in 1986, and it is 1,153 pages long. She's a beast. I will read you the description on the back. To the children, their town was their whole world. To the adults, knowing better, Derry, Maine was just their hometown. Familiar, well-ordered, a good place to live. It was the children who saw and felt what made Derry so horribly different. In the storm drains, in the sewers, it lurked, taking on the shape of every nightmare, each person's deepest dread. Sometimes it reached up, seizing, tearing, killing. The adults, knowing better, knew nothing. Time passed and the children grew up, moved away. The horror of it was deep buried, wrapped in forgetfulness, until the grown-up children were called back once more to confront it as it stirred and coiled in the sullen depths of their memories, reaching up again to make their past nightmares a terrible present reality. Frightening, epic, and brilliant, Stephen King's It is one of the greatest works of a true storytelling master. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The main reason I docked it down 1 star is because no book needs to be this fucking long. There were plenty of parts that I think could have been cut out of this to make it a little bit more digestible, but with that being said, I did really enjoy it. And the reason that I said that this book set me up to enjoy this book is that I think because I was so wrapped up in Tommyknockers with trying to keep all the characters straight in my head and trying to focus on all the little details and like piece the puzzle together, that made me frustrated. So going into this book, when I started it, I said to myself, this book is a mammoth. There's probably going to be a lot of characters to remember, a lot of different storylines that converge. So instead of trying really hard to piece the puzzles together, just enjoy each person's story for what it is and don't try too hard to put all the pieces together as you're reading it, because I think that's what made me dislike Tommyknocker so much. And because I had that mindset going into this one, I was really able to enjoy the different characters, and I wasn't really frustrated trying to figure out who goes with who and who is whose mother and who is whose friend and all this stuff. So I think that made me enjoy this a lot more. This story is disturbing and creepy and everything you expect from Stephen King. It's really like quintessential Stephen King. If you're a fan of his and you haven't read this yet, I think you definitely should. It's a cult classic, a fan favorite, and it's gonna take you a while, but in my opinion, it's worth it. Those are the only 2 books that I read this month, just because they were so long I couldn't be bothered to read anything else. And now, before we go through my favorite books from 2020, I did want to share with you a few fun reading stats thanks to Goodreads. No, this is not any kind of sponsorship. I just started using Goodreads this year to track my reading, and I have found it very helpful. And at the end of the year, they give you a little My Year in Books summary, and they give you some fun stats. So if you're a nerd like me, you like a good statistic, and I wanted to share a couple with you because I thought they were kind of fun. The first one is that I have read 38 books this year. I think that's the most books I've ever read in a year, so pat on the back for that. My reading goal that I set on Goodreads was for 30 books, so I surpassed it by quite a bit. I think when I set my goal for this year, I will probably keep it around 30 just because I don't want to make reading like this chore, this like thing I feel like I have to do in order to meet some goal. But it is fun to kind of see how far you're progressing on a reading goal. So I'll probably keep it around 30 just to check my expectations a little bit, but I do want to set one. I read a total of 16,652 pages this year, which is crazy to me. That's a lot of pages. At least for me it is. The shortest book I read this year was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and that was only 216 pages. And then the longest book that I read this year was The Stand by Stephen King, and that was 1,172 pages. The average book length for me was 438 pages. And my average rating for 2020 was 3.9, which I think is pretty good. Like, that means I read a lot of good books this year. And with that being said, let's get into those very good books. These books are not in order of how much I liked them, but in order from how I read them. So starting at the beginning of the year all the way to the end, all of the books that I gave 5 stars. And I'm not going to go in depth about each of them because I have book reviews on all of them up on my channel. I will link all of my book review videos from 2020 below if you want to check them out. First up, we have Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. Next was The Outsider by Stephen King, and I do not have a copy of that with me because I got it from the library. Next up, Ricochet by Judy Fridono. Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, which I borrowed from my mom, so I don't have a hard copy of that either. The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Daré. Educated by Tara Westover. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. More Than Enough by Elaine Welteroth. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And last but certainly not least, The Green Mile by Stephen King. It was a strong year for Stephen King, apparently. And it's a very, very tough choice, but if I had to choose my absolute favorite book that I read this year, I would have to go with The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Daré. If you're gonna read any book in 2021, I would suggest this one. And that is going to do it. I have officially reviewed every single book that I've read in 2020, and if you have watched every single one of those videos, I want to say a huge, huge thank you for all of the support, and I hope you found them somewhat helpful or entertaining. Again, make sure you leave a comment below and let me know what your favorite books you read this year are. And also, if you could, give a like, subscribe, and make sure you turn on post notifications so you get notified anytime I post a new video. That's gonna do it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!